we are actually exposed to hydrogen gas, or many of us are exposed to hydrogen gas almost every day. So everyone's basal level can be different, meaning this basal level forms that minimum threshold, right?
A lot of people think I'm the hydrogen guy, but I'm not the hydrogen guy. Taiwon Hubbard is the hydrogen guy.
Basically, what is hydrogen's typical levels that can be dissolved into ordinary water under normal atmospheric pressure or normal atmospheric conditions? How hydrogen gas goes into our bodies matters, right? How it goes in and how it exits. And so when you're talking about hydrogen-rich water, getting into how hydrogen kind of works, you kind of have to get into how hydrogen works in the body a little bit when I talk about this. So I have the quintessential struggle story, African-American story, what I cannot stop thinking about when
All right. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have a special guest. This is the OG, original hydrogen man. Don't be fooled by fakes out there. A lot of people think I'm the hydrogen guy, but I'm not the hydrogen guy. Taiwon Hubbard is the hydrogen guy. He has been covering the hydrogen water scene since, I don't know how long, Taiwan?
Yeah, I've been talking about hydrogen water now for over a decade.
For over a decade. So all of you newbies like me, Taiwan was there way before we all discovered the benefits of hydrogen water. So Taiwan, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you, Gary. And I'm doing good, man. So thank you for having me on. It's always good to be able to talk with others about H2.
All right, let's jump right in, Taiwan, because the thing that everybody wants to know, the question I get asked over and over and over again, is hydrogen water a scam? And why are all of these crazy internet people selling crazy hydrogen water bottles? And most people say they don't feel anything from it. What's your take on this, Taiwan?
Yeah, man. So I guess you kind of depends on, I guess, what you mean by a scam. I think there are hydrogen water bottles that are on the market that are scams. They do not provide what would be qualified as hydrogen water based on what we see in the studies. And so I guess that kind of starts with what is hydrogen water and how do we define that? And so one of the major issues of why people believe hydrogen water is a scam is because we have this notion or this basic understanding, basically from high school and things like this. Where are the places hydrogen exists and where it doesn't? So we know that, some people know that hydrogen exists in stars, right? And stars use it to make energy. We know hydrogen makes up water, and so we hear terms like hydrogen-rich water, and we're like, hydrogen's already in water. Why would I even want to buy that? It has to be a scam. And unfortunately, if you were to ask one question, it can actually help you with your understanding, which is, what is hydrogen-rich water, instead of starting with our skepticism. And so hydrogen-rich water, by definition, is simply ordinary water that has dissolved molecular hydrogen gas, dissolved into the water up to therapeutic concentrations. And so what I mean by therapeutic concentration is that there's enough hydrogen gas in that water that when you drink it, you're actually going to get or induce therapeutic effects or beneficial effects on your body from the hydrogen gas that is dissolved into the water. So this is what hydrogen water is. There is many scientific articles on hydrogen-rich water. Currently, right now, there's over 3,000 scientific publications worldwide, covering more than 170 human disease models, showing that it has therapeutic effects for virtually every organ in the human body, and no damaging effects. So we know that molecular hydrogen has a very high therapeutic potential, and the human clinical studies on hydrogen has actually been trending really well, showing that it's not just inducing therapeutic effects in something like animal models, but it's also inducing therapeutic effects in human models. And this is translating really well. And so this is what hydrogen water is. It is not a scam, but there are bottles and products on the market that are scams that don't provide what would be an actual form of hydrogen-rich water that's going to benefit you.
All right, let's get to the nitty-gritty, because you mentioned therapeutic effect or the therapeutic dose. And this is another question I get all the time. What is the therapeutic dose, and is it the same for everyone? And how do I know I'm getting a therapeutic dose?
Yeah, so what is a therapeutic dose? Well, based on the scientific studies, right now what we see in broadly throughout the human disease models is that 1 to 3 milligrams of H2 or hydrogen gas via water. So when you drink your water, if you ingest 1 to 3 milligrams per day, induces a therapeutic effect on humans. And so this is what we know in the based on the scientific literature. And we also see a dose-dependent effect with hydrogen, meaning that the greater the dose, the greater the effect. And there is a minimum threshold that has to be hit for us to even get any kind of effects. And then I would say, secondly, what you said is quite interesting, right? Because can it be dependent upon the person as well? And now this is where it kind of gets technical, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but basically everybody, or essentially majority of people, based on our diet, produce hydrogen gas via colonic fermentation in our gut. And so when we eat fibers, like non-digestible carbohydrates, we naturally produce hydrogen gas. And now 14% of that actually diffuses through our intestinal mucosa, or our intestinal barrier, getting into systemic circulation, forming a basal level of hydrogen gases in our blood, somewhere between 1 to 5 micromolars per day. And so we are actually exposed to hydrogen gas, or many of us are exposed to hydrogen gas almost every day. And so everyone's basal level can be different, meaning this basal level forms that minimum threshold, right? And so when you consume hydrogen-rich water without knowing your basal level, which none of us do, we necessarily don't know if we're going to get a beneficial effect or not. This is kind of where this dosing data needs to come in from the research. And so we don't technically know, let's say, what your particular minimum threshold, Gary, would be. This is why it's always better to aim higher than lower with hydrogen-rich water, predicated on the dose you can receive in a day right now based on the literature. And so what we can say safely is that what we see in the scientific literature is 1 to 3 milligrams per day or more seems to be therapeutic. And we do kind of have a, what you want to call it, a particular formula that you can use based on a person's body weight to actually see what their minimum threshold dose may be. But it's still going to be kind of contingent because we don't know people's diet. And so it's best to make sure you aim higher than lower, and assure you try to get anywhere between 2 or more. My personal target is 2 to 5 per day.
Now, does 2 to 3 milligrams equate to? This is the math part that kind of always throws me off. Does that equate to parts per million or parts per billion? And how do you calculate the volume of water that's producing and how that factors into the dose? Can you explain that to us?
Yeah. So this is where you get into kind of like the concentration units. And so you have ppm, you have ppb, and you have milligrams per liter. Okay. And so the most common that are going to be in the marketplace is going to be ppm and ppb. And so to kind of understand these, ppm stands for parts per million. And so 1 ppm means there's 1 part of hydrogen for 1 million parts of water. And so ppb means there's 1 part of hydrogen gas, or molecular hydrogen, that molecule, for 1 billion parts of water. So easy way to make sense of ppm and ppb together would be to say for 1 ppm will equal 1,000 ppb, right? And so sometimes companies like to use this 1,000 ppb because it sounds, or ppb because it looks great because it's a big number. But all these is really referring to the concentration of hydrogen gas within the water. But there's really just only one piece of the puzzle. Okay, you also have to say, or you also have to bring in volume. And so the way to make this very simple so we can understand it is I like to use milligrams per liter. So I think we're far more accustomed to milligrams. When you take some kind of, aspirin or whatever, some over-the-counter medicine, they're going to say take 2 to 4 of these per day, and you can look on the bottle and it's going to say it's going to have a certain milligram dose that's associated with the pill. And so we kind of understand milligrams. And so milligrams per liter makes this really easy because milligrams per liter is equivalent to ppm. So you can just easily exchange it out. And so to know what kind of milligrams of hydrogen gas you're going to get into your body while using the unit milligrams per liter, we can just use a simple scenario, right? So let's say we have a glass of water that holds about 16 ounces of hydrogen-rich water, all right? The concentration of the water is going to be 1.6 milligrams per liter, or 1.6 ppm, right? If I were to consume that water, that's 16 ounces, I would have ingested 0.8 milligrams of hydrogen. Now you ask the question, how'd you get that? Well, because 16 ounces is 0.5 liters. right? So an easy way to calculate the dose is you take the concentration times the liters will give you the dose, the milligram dose. So 1.6 times 0.5 gives 0.8 milligrams. So now I know I'm kind of at the bottom of that minimum threshold of that 1 to 3 milligrams per day, right? I just ingested close to a milligram of hydrogen gas in that scenario. So this is really important because it moves hydrogen gas from this like category, or hydrogen water from this category, ooh, I just drink the water per day, so actually thinking about it thinking about it in kind of the frame of kind of what we see with medicine, because molecular hydrogen is a medical gas. So ingesting the right amount of it is going to give you the best chances for inducing therapeutic effects on you. If you're just willy-nilly drinking and you have no concept of how much hydrogen gas is in the water and how much you need to drink to get the benefits, then you're basically wasting your time and your money, right? It's the same thing of like getting, let's say, aspirin or something, or Tylenol, and instead of looking at the back of the bottle and seeing how much you're supposed to take to kind of be able to get the effect to reduce like the pain of your headache, you like, I'm gonna cut 1/16 of this pill and I'm gonna just take it willy-nilly. You're not going to get the effects because those effects are associated with a particular concentration, or I should say a particular milligram dose, right? And so this same thing applies for hydrogen-rich water. So it's the concentration times the volume will give you the milligram dose. And I actually make this real easy because I have a page on my website called H2 Calculators, and all you have to do is know the volume that you're drinking and the concentration of the hydrogen water or the hydrogen water product that you're using, what that concentration, or the verifiable concentration that it can produce. You plug in those numbers and it'll give you the ingested milligram.
Yeah, so just to be, we're going to get to the website and you and all that. I just want to understand. Basically, you're saying drinking 3 16-ounce bottles of hydrogen-enriched water, assuming the device you're using is actually producing what it's supposed to be producing, you should be getting a therapeutic dose, correct?
Correct. If the concentration is high enough, right? If the concentration is high enough, because the concentration matters. And so let's say if you had something really, really small, like 0.5 or 0.3 milligrams per liter, right? And you would have to drink far more water. So you have to drink far more than 3 glasses to get to that 1 to 2 or 3 milligrams. And so this is why it's really important. Concentration does matter, but it can also go the other way around, right? You can have a really high concentration, but if you're drinking it in like a thimble, then basically you're still not going to get a very good dose from that, right? You have 10 ppm, but you know it's basically like in a thimble, right? It's like this tiny little, so you won't get enough. So the concentration and the volume really do matter, and so basically this is where we can get into it later on, where my company helps people navigate that so they can actually know which product is going to be good for them or not.
Okay, so I have 2 more questions, and then we're going to get into the whole backstory. But the other question is, if you hear often companies claiming to be producing 8 parts per million and 5 to 10 parts per million in basically 10 to 16 ounces of water. Okay, this is getting deep now, Taiwan. You got to talk about atmospheric pressure and how the atmosphere and pressure is producing the hydrogen, because I don't understand how you can be making 8 parts per million, especially in a pitcher. So a lot of people I've heard complain about the plastic bottles and, why isn't it glass? And I know that creates a pressure situation. But talk about atmospheric pressure and producing the therapeutic amount of hydrogen and how that can affect your dose as well.
Yeah. So I think to get at the foundation of your question, we kind of have to start with basically what is hydrogen's typical levels that can be dissolved into ordinary water under normal atmospheric pressure or normal atmospheric conditions. And so basically the maximum amount of hydrogen gas that can be dissolved into water under normal atmospheric conditions, or called 1 atm, would be 1.6 milligrams per liter. So that's the maximum amount you can get. So if I were to take a glass of water right now and I started bubbling hydrogen gas into that water, the maximum amount you're going to be able to get is 1.6 ppm. Okay. Now the funny thing is people don't realize is that this principle relates to not just hydrogen gas, but all other atmospheric gases. So, for example, let's say I talk about oxygen, right? We breathe oxygen every day, and we obviously need it. It's definitely used for, breaking down molecules so we can produce energy, all this kind of stuff. But we don't realize that we drink oxygen in our water every day because oxygen is dissolved into our water every day. And so typically under normal atmospheric conditions, for oxygen, we're typically drinking somewhere between 13 to 13.7 milligrams per liter of oxygen in our ordinary water. But the maximum amount that you can dissolve into water is up to 40 milligrams per liter of oxygen. So this principle applies to all the other atmospheric gases that we have, that we breathe. And so this is the maximum amount of hydrogen gas is 1.6. So how these products are getting 8 or 9 or 10 or all this kind of stuff, the way they do that is by what's called increasing partial pressure. So dissolving hydrogen gas under pressure. So let's say, for example, I had a sealed off container and I put, let's say, a glass of water in there, ordinary glass, and that container was nothing filled up but nothing but hydrogen gas. And we pressurized that container to 3 times the pressure of normal atmospheric pressure, which is 14.7 pounds per square inch. So right now at sea level, that's what the atmospheric pressure is, 14.7 pounds per square inch. So let's go ahead and not just double that, but let's go ahead and triple that. What would the hydrogen concentration be in the water? Well, you just basically take 1.6 times 3, right? And so now you're going to be getting someplace up to around 3 ppm or so of hydrogen gas dissolved into the water, right? And so this is what we're talking about, where these bottles, let's say these bottles behind me or other products, they're basically using pressure or PSI to dissolve hydrogen gas into the water to a higher concentration. And so this is not foreign to us. This is something that we all know. We just don't really think about this. We don't think about the science of the pop that we drink, right? So when you go to the store and you get a 2 liter of soda and you open it, and so when you open it, you're releasing pressure. So that 2 liters was under pressure, and they're dissolving carbon dioxide gas into water. And carbon dioxide gas is far more soluble than hydrogen gas in water, so they can dissolve a lot more of it into the water. But that's why you see it effervesce, right? And so basically, carbon dioxide gas is coming out of solution, and it's a really high concentration. The same thing applies to hydrogen-rich water. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to hydrogen-rich water, there are a lot of claims, but that doesn't mean that those claims are substantiated. And so while you can claim it makes 8 ppm, dissolving hydrogen gas up to 8 ppm in water is quite challenging, and there are only few products that can actually do that. And I've yet to see any hydrogen water bottle that I've been able to test, and I've tested a lot of hydrogen water bottles, be able to achieve those levels.
Okay. See, I told you guys, Taiwan's the sort of the mad scientist. I flunked chemistry and math, so this is beyond me. But I'm glad you're making it all simple for me.
Hey, man, I'm trying.
And so the next question, and then we're going to dive into H2 Hub, but is, we're talking about water and enriching water, infusing hydrogen water, but every time I talk to Taiwan, he's got the nasal cannulas going. He's got his kids on nasal cannulas. He's bathing in hydrogen water. Like, how do you compare? And also, there's the hydrogen tablets, hydrogen powders, magnesium powders, and so I know I've talked to some other sort of hydrogen experts who all say get it any way you can. But I'm curious to know what your take is in terms of, like, why are you breathing it versus drinking it versus when do you want to use the magnesium, or do you use it all together?
Yeah. So basically, this gets into the kind of administration methods of hydrogen gas and what we kind of see in the research. So there's multiple ways to administer hydrogen gas to the human body. One is through the most common method would be hydrogen-enriched water, or water that has dissolved hydrogen gas in it. And then there's also the inhalation of hydrogen gas through specialized devices. And so these would be kind of like hydrogen inhalation units or hydrogen generators. And then you have topical applications. So things that can be like a hydrogen bath, where you dissolve hydrogen gas into a bath and you soak in it, or like hydrogen creams or things. And you also have different mechanisms or different product types to produce particular, let's say for hydrogen water, for example. So you have magnesium-based tablets that can produce hydrogen-rich water, or you have these electrolysis systems, larger devices, or smaller electrolysis systems like these bottles. And so there's various ways. Now, I think to like kind of the heart of your question deals with hydrogen water versus hydrogen inhalation, right? Like, what's the pros and cons here? Why are you doing both and all these kind of things? And so, first and foremost, I think we need to understand from the scientific standpoint, looking at the literature, there's unique or advantages to hydrogen-rich water, and then there's also disadvantages. And there's also advantages to hydrogen inhalation and disadvantages. Both kind of have their own pros, and the others kind of have cons against each other. And so this is why you see in the scientific literature, you can actually be doing hydrogen-rich water and hydrogen inhalation simultaneously at the same time, and they can have a synergistic effect on your body. And you say, what? Both of them are providing hydrogen gas. So why would they benefit you any kind of different way? And so this kind of gets into what's the fancy words, the pharmacokinetics of hydrogen. And so basically how hydrogen gas goes into our bodies matters, right? How it goes in and how it exits. And so when you're talking about hydrogen-rich water, getting into how hydrogen kind of works, you kind of have to get into how hydrogen works in the body a little bit when I talk about this. So hydrogen functions as what's called a gaseous signal modulator. That's a big fancy way of saying basically hydrogen is kind of somewhat like a master regulator of our cellular systems. So it goes in, it regulates a bunch of different, let's say, molecules or transcription factors that alter gene expression and how cells are actually functioning, right? It does this and then it leaves, okay? So this is how it works. So when you drink hydrogen-rich water, the hydrogen-rich water is going into your gastrointestinal tract, and the first organ that it hits is the stomach, right? We might not think that we benefit our bodies via our stomach, but we do. So hydrogen actually regulates, let's say, different hormones through the stomach, such as ghrelin or leptin. Ghrelin is a hunger hormone, leptin is the full hormone, right? But they do more than just make us feel full or hungry, right? Like they can have beneficial effects on our body or negative effects. So primarily, when you talk about ghrelin, it has very beneficial effects. It can be neuroprotective, anti-inflammatory, right? So hydrogen can stimulate and activate things in the stomach. And then it takes a direct path to your intestines, your small intestines, where 80% of the water is absorbed, right? So hydrogen now can work or basically act on our intestines, right? And it can, regulate certain things such as increasing butyrate-producing bacteria, which is like a short-chain fatty acid that's super beneficial for us. It can reduce oxidative stress. Inflammation can work on like gut dysbiosis, improve like the gut metabolites, like propionate is another one. And so hydrogen can actually regulate things in the small intestines, and then it passively diffuses through our intestinal barrier, gets into systemic circulation, takes a direct path to our liver, right? Regulates a host of things in the liver, right? And then goes from our liver to our lungs, where we lose about 60% of the hydrogen when we just exhale it out. And then 40% of it is actually routed through our arterial system to our heart, brain, all these other organs, into our muscles. And so because of this order, right, stomach, intestines, liver, right, regulating things in these particular organs, hydrogen water can have distinct therapeutic effects because those organs also affect other systems, right? And so, for example, they've seen that hydrogen can benefit Parkinson's disease. Hydrogen-rich water benefits Parkinson's disease. In, like say, in a particular study, hydrogen helped Parkinson's disease and was able to suppress it. But they were wondering how this happened because when they checked the levels of H2 in the brain, they were really low. And so they're like, how can it be doing anything at these levels, right? But they actually found out the hydrogen was suppressing Parkinson's by regulating ghrelin in the stomach, and ghrelin was basically going and having beneficial effects on Parkinson's. So this is called hydrogen's mediated effects through secondary messengers. So this is what it's called in the literature. So this is why hydrogen-rich water kind of has its own distinct effects, okay? Now hydrogen inhalation has a totally different pharmacokinetics, right? So hydrogen inhalation goes right into your lungs, right? It takes a direct path right into your arterial system, hits your heart, your brain, and you can actually saturate your body with hydrogen gas kind of more systemically and equally at higher levels. So for example, if I go back to hydrogen-rich water, when you're drinking hydrogen-rich water, let's say we had a glass of hydrogen-rich water, right? And it had 1.6 milligrams per liter and it was 16 ounces, right? If you convert that into milliliters, like the volume of the gas, right? Milliliters. It's only 19 milliliters of hydrogen gas dissolved into that water. So you're talking about 19 milliliters that's making its way through, right? And going into our entire system. Whereas these hydrogen inhalation systems, you could be inhaling hydrogen gas and be breathing with one breath 19 milliliters. So you're able to get more hydrogen in and saturate your body completely at higher levels with hydrogen inhalation than you can with hydrogen water. So, for example, hydrogen inhalation will be able to reach higher levels in the brain than hydrogen water would. And so this is why they can have their own kind of distinct yet related therapeutic effects, and they actually can have synergistic basically synergistic effects with each other when they're administered at the same time, right, simultaneously. So you could be drinking hydrogen-rich water while you're breathing, or in conjunction with one another. So you could take hydrogen-rich water, drink it, and after 30 minutes start breathing, and they've seen in the scientific literature that hydrogen's effects systemically are far greater than if you did it like a monotherapy, right, one over the other.
So this is really fascinating stuff. I'm interested in inhalation also, and there's been studies with COVID patients doing hydrogen inhalation, having better outcomes. And I'm obsessed, as I'm sure you are, with VO2 max. When you get to be a certain age, like I am, you want to preserve as much VO2 max as you can. And
Yep.
sometimes my body won't let me do sort of fast twitch, high intensity hit workouts, but
Yeah.
the hydrogen inhalation can also have an impact on your VO2 max, correct?
That is correct. We have certain studies right now that actually show. We have studies right now that show that hydrogen can improve VO2 max, and that's hydrogen-rich water and hydrogen inhalation. And so, not only that, they've actually seen that hydrogen can actually improve O2 saturation. So it's funny. So you would actually think that while breathing hydrogen, a different gas, right, than let's say oxygen, that how's that going to help with my VO2 max and my O2 saturation? But you have to realize hydrogen is improving all of your cellular systems, so your efficiency, and they've actually seen this where in one particular study where hydrogen improved the ventilation of athletes during exercise while breathing hydrogen gas. So this is quite cool because when you actually think about it, if you're an athlete, the best thing you can do is optimize your systems. Well, I don't see anything in scientific literature that optimizes the body more than hydrogen gas.
All right, Taiwan, it's time to tell people your story. What a great transition, because I know you have a background in sports. I know you also consult with some professional athletes. So in that regard, let people know sort of your background. How did you wind up becoming this sort of hydrogen-obsessed human being and delving into the science and understanding it better than anyone I've ever talked to?
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, you're gonna talk about my background. Like, can I floss a little bit? Can I show off some rings?
Oh, no.
No. So anyway, yeah, man. So yeah, it definitely did not start with me being obsessed about molecular hydrogen or any of those things. I am a man of faith. I was born and raised in Kansas City, and my biggest dream was to make it to the NFL and to bless my mom and my sisters. I was the only man in the house. Single mom situation growing up. I have the quintessential struggle story, African American story, and so what I could not stop thinking about when I was younger was how I'm going to make it to the league, and I did that, and I pursued that all the way until I'm basically there. I'm knocking on the door, and so during that time, I ended up getting introduced to alkaline ionized water. And so I didn't know nothing about it. I studied corporate fitness in college, and my wife's cousin comes up to me talking about alkaline ionized water. And he didn't call it that. He called it by a different name. But he was singing its praises. It was the greatest thing ever. And he told me all these wonderful health effects. And I'm like, yeah, I'm an athlete. I'm very acquainted with water. And I have some basic classes under my belt. I mean, from college, some basic physiology. And what the heck you're talking about does not sound like what water can do. And so I was skeptical already anyway. He wasn't the most trustworthy guy. And so I kind of let it go. was like, cool. Yeah. I moved on. I was like, yeah, nah, man, I'm good, man. Um, and I ended up, though, doing one thing for him. I did him a favor. He said, just drink some of the water and tell me what you think. So I did that. He gave me like 2 gallons. And so I was training pretty heavy at the time. And my training regimen was pretty crazy. As you could imagine, trying to make it to the NFL, you got to train pretty hard. And so I did drink this water, and I noticed benefits to my recovery, like crazy benefits. And I was like, and he explicitly said you need to drink it fresh. And I was like, okay. And I noticed crazy benefits, like as far as my recovery time goes. And I was like, still not a trustworthy dude. So kept it pimping, right? I was just deucing. I'm done. And but if
Can you explain Can you explain what alkalized iodized water is?
Yes. So basically, alkaline ionized water is a type of alkaline water that is produced from a machine called a water ionizer. Okay, so these water ionizers basically can hook up right to a person's tap. They typically come with some kind of filtration, mechanism or something, some filter, and then they take water through this electrolysis process, and the water that comes out of the top hoses of these systems will be alkaline. Okay? And so I started drinking this water, and this is what alkaline ionized water is. I started drinking this water and noticed some benefits to my recovery. And moved on, and then a little bit later, I ended up, the topic got brought up again. And so I said, this time, I'm going to drink some water. I did it. I noticed the same effect, some benefits to my recovery, and I just recovered way faster. I was like, dude, what is going on? So I said, I'm going to crack the code. I'm going to crack it. I'm going to figure out what the heck's going on with this weird water. Started digging online, and all I basically ran into is what we have today about hydrogen water, which was a bunch of marketers, a bunch of people trying to capitalize on it and selling it, and a bunch of blog articles, and then a bunch of other articles that said it was baloney. So I don't know what's what. So anyway, I'm a Christian. I prayed about it, and I prayed to God about it, and I kid you not, like 2 weeks later, I see on Facebook some old white dude teaching about the chemistry of the water ionizer. I'm like, and he's going through all this chemistry kind of stuff, and I was like, I'm gonna ask this dude some questions because no one else has answered anything, but this dude, like, he got answers. And so he was talking about some of the science. I asked him, I said, hey man, what's going on with this water ionizer stuff? He said, man, it's basic high school chemistry. These water ionizers are decomposing water into its natural elements, hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. The hydrogen gas comes out of the top hose with the alkaline water, right? And the oxygen is coming out with the bottom hose with acidic water. And I was like, okay. And he's like, hydrogen's the key. And I was like, oh, right. I was like, man, when you actually look at the gallons of the water, it's bubbly. It's like super bubbly water. And it's like, why has it got so much bubbles? But it doesn't. But it don't have no fizz or anything. But it looks like it would look like carbonated water almost. How many bubbles is in it? And I was like, oh, okay. So it's hydrogen gas. I knew nothing really much about hydrogen gas. I was just like everybody else. Hydrogen gas. I mean, you talking about like the Hindenburg or like some explosion, something dangerous or something. And so I started looking at it, and I started looking up medical publications on hydrogen gas and typing in whatever disease model I wanted. So I would type in things like hydrogen gas, cancer, PubMed. Hydrogen gas, diabetes, PubMed. Hydrogen gas, arthritis, PubMed. I just started looking up any disease model I could think of. I didn't know very many at the time. And there was just study after study after study after study after study. So I started reading those studies. And if you're not some medical professional or some doctor or some researchers, reading studies is a daunting task. So I would read a couple words, didn't know what the heck that word was, look that word up, read another couple words, didn't know what that word was, look that up. And before I know it, I got stuck in this rabbit hole that I couldn't get out of. I was like, this is fascinating, uber fascinating, beyond what I could imagine. I was like, dude, it helps with everything. I'm like, why does it seem like it keeps helping with everything? Like, there's nothing, I can't find anything that is not helping with. And I became utterly convicted that hydrogen gas was a diamond in the rough that no one knew about, but I need to tell somebody about it. Because I was like, these people are getting people to buy water ionizers, but they're telling them and selling them on alkaline. When the whole time, the alkaline pH is a byproduct of the hydrogen gas production. So when you take, let's say, for example, a water ionizer, when you take a water ionizer and you funnel your normal water through it, what's going to end up happening is that at the negative part, right, at the negative terminal or the negative plate, there's going to be plates that's going to be within the system that they can run electrolysis with. At the negative plate, what you're going to be doing is going to be decomposing water by taking the acidic component of water, right, which is called a hydrogen ion, and off that negative plate is going to receive an electron, and it's going to become a hydrogen gas, right? It's going to become it's going to become hydrogen atom. Well, hydrogen is a diatomic element. It naturally bonds with itself. So hydrogen bonds with another hydrogen and becomes hydrogen gas. Well, the acidic component of water basically was ripped off water. So what's left is basically OH minus, which is called hydroxide, the alkaline component of water. So this is why the water becomes alkaline, because it's taking acid, converting it into hydrogen gas. And so basically what you're left with is just base. You're basically left with a alkaline agent. And so this is why it comes out alkaline. So the only reason why it's alkaline is because it's making hydrogen. And so I was like, this is crazy, dude. Like, I got to tell everybody that it's the hydrogen. It's not the alkaline pH that's the thing. And you use these silly little examples to show people that acid can really just, with this particular type of water, it can, like pop, let's say, can neutralize the alkaline pH really easy. So I was like, you can neutralize the alkaline pH really easy. And what's going to happen when it goes into the stomach? Well, your stomach's far more acidic than your pop. So how's it going to make through the stomach? So I started trying to teach everybody, okay, look, these water ionizers can give you benefits, but it's the hydrogen gas. I started teaching everybody, and then literally this was at the exact same time I had one of the biggest opportunities of my life. So I basically had a private workout with all 32 NFL teams in attendance. I was amongst 7 athletes that got to attend this event, including Keenan Allen, which still plays in the NFL today. And so I was part of this group of athletes, and I did my job. And people don't know, but I mean, I was on H2 at the time, so I did really good. I had one of the fastest 40 times, had all kind of wonderful things. So anyway, did great. Talking to a couple teams, I didn't get brought into camp. But at this same time, I was teaching everybody about hydrogen. So much so that I caught notoriety with companies. So they were like, I don't know who this little black dude is, but he knows the stuff about hydrogen. And basically, I ended up getting a company that caught interest in me in Florida. And I went and worked for that company for about 7 months. And then I kept doing what I do best and teach about H2. And in 7 months' time, I had 3 other offers to basically be a president of a hydrogen company with a board of doctors out of California. Had another group of investors that was in Canada that was like, dude, you're amazing. And can you be the face of our company or work a deal with us? And then I also had another company that was in Florida that wanted to bring me on. And I took the one where I would have the most say. So I worked with a group of investors out of Canada and started my own hydrogen company. And then we brought a product to market. I did all the research and development, product improvement, worked with a bunch of engineers and scientists and stuff like that. I gained a lot of experience over those first couple years, being exposed to a lot of technology. And after that, that group of investors went a different direction. They found a big marketer person, MLM person they can work with instead of this little old dude. But at that point in time, I gained so much knowledge that I was able to say, okay, what I want to do with this. So I saw the landscape of the hydrogen industry at the time, which is, look, man, people are buying these big expensive systems and they're being sold on some kind of pretense about something that's not even the therapeutic agent. So I can help people with that. But also, I found out these water ionizers have severe limitations for dissolving therapeutic levels of hydrogen gas consistently, right? So that led me being like, okay, I have to help people with products as well.
Okay, well, I want to get into what happened to the NFL career, but first I want to ask you about alkaline water. So alkaline water is not the same as hydrogen-enriched water, even though hydrogen-enriched water is alkaline. Is that correct?
Correct. Hydrogen water can be alkaline water, but alkaline water is not hydrogen water. So
are there no benefits to alkaline water in your opinion? Is it just not worth it?
I would say alkaline water actually functions as a fab or something that doesn't really have much merit when it comes to the scientific literature because of what I said. So if you get into the basis of alkaline water, Alkaline water, by definition, is not a buffer. And what I mean by a buffer is kind of a technical term for agents that can essentially maintain their pH. Okay, so a buffer would be something like baking soda. Okay, so baking soda, if you take baking soda, which exists at an 8.1 pH, and you add acid to it, like an acidic, like orange juice or something, right? Baking soda will release hydroxide, the alkaline component of water. It will release a base to fight the acid to stay at 8.1 pH, right? But if you put another base on baking soda, you put a base on baking soda, it will release acid to try to maintain that 8.1 pH. So it's a bidirectional agent. It's a buffer. It's going to fight either direction to maintain its pH. Alkaline water is not like that. Alkaline water is basically going to be alkaline for two reasons. Either going to have it's always going to be for one reason, technically. It would be because it has a little mild elevation in hydroxide. But because it doesn't have any buffers in the water, it won't fight to keep its pH. So this is why I was saying in my example earlier, if you take, alkaline water at a 9.5 pH, right? And you take pH drops and you put pH drops in it so you can actually see what the actual pH of the water is going to probably, pH drops are going to make it be like purple or something. And if you take a capful of Sprite, right? And you can put some pH drop into the Sprite if you wanted to, but you can take a capful of Sprite and then you could pour that capful into this, 10 ounces of alkaline water. You will see that it all will become acidic. So, because it's not a buffer, it doesn't have any buffering capacity. So if the principle is drinking alkaline water is going to help your body maintain an alkaline pH, how can it help your body maintain an alkaline pH when it can't help itself maintain an alkaline pH? This is the faulty idea of the ideology of alkalizing your body. Because essentially your body, especially your blood, but your body itself, is tightly regulated. It has mechanisms that regulate its pH. So for example, your blood is at a 7.365 to 7.45 pH. You start to move it out of that range, more alkaline, you're going to run into alkalosis. You start moving it more acidic, you're going to run into acidosis, right? And both of them can be deadly if not handled correctly. And so this is why hyperventilating is a bad thing, right? You start to hyperventilate, you're actually releasing too much carbon dioxide, which carbon dioxide, when naturally dissolved into the blood, becomes carbonic acid. So it helps your body's actually regulating itself by using bicarbonate. And this is what your kidneys and your lungs work together to maintain this blood pH. And so this is why it's so critical, because the reality is that your colon exists at a different kind of pH that's regulated, right? Your like duodenum, right, that's right underneath your stomach, is going to be slightly it's going to be more alkaline, obviously, than your stomach, because your stomach is going to have hydrochloric acid, and your body has to neutralize that hydrochloric acid. So it uses pancreatic juice into the duodenum that makes it slightly alkaline, so that when it hits your actual small intestines, you're not nuking all your bacteria. And so this is why your body is tightly regulated. So now you're going to drink alkaline water, and somehow it's going to help your body maintain all these pHs, these pH values. That's not how it works, because it's not a buffer. Okay. And even if it did, it would probably be problematic. You don't want that. So the alkaline water itself is either going to be neutralizing your stomach. If it's not neutralizing your stomach, it's going to be neutralizing your intestines. If it's not neutralizing your intestines, it will definitely be neutralizing your blood.
So it's safe to say you're not a fan. Okay, Taiwan's not a fan.
Not a fan, man. Not a fan at all.
All right, tell us what happened with the your NFL tryouts, or what happened. Did you hit an injury? What happened?
Yeah. No, man. So I didn't hit an injury at all. My background as far as football goes, basically, I ended up playing professional indoor football in Wichita coming out of college. So I had a lot of like successes in politics that I ran into college. And so coming out of college, I was being looked at by the Chiefs and the Vikings, but I did not get brought into camp. And so the name of the game is that you have to continue to play, or play somewhere to be noticed. That's just essential. You can't just take years off and expect for the NFL to notice you. So I was being kind of recruited or looked at by a couple Canadian teams, such as Winnipeg or BC Lions. And I was amongst some of the top people. I was between me and this other guy, basically with Winnipeg, and they brought the other guy in. So I was saying like, well, okay, I got to do something. So I ended up playing basically like arena ball in Wichita, Kansas, and I basically destroyed. I did super well. In a way that I was acknowledged by my general manager and people there that you should not be playing here. You should be playing somewhere else. You should be playing in the NFL. You're kind of above this league. And so I did really well there. And during that time, I ran through a couple agents. And the name of the game is not so much how talented you are. It is about who you know. I spoke to people like Cameron Wimley, these kind of other NFL athletes that are friends of mine. And basically, they said the NFL is like a private golf club. You got to know somebody to get in. And so I ran to a couple agents while I was there, and I ended up getting with an agency called Sports Atlas agency that was ran by a gentleman named JT Johnson. And he represented a couple big time athletes and also took notice of me and said, hey, dude, I think you got what it takes. So anyway, like I said, I ended up being part of this agency and being selected to be one of the athletes that got to be represented at this private workout. And so what ended up happening was after that, I know they were talking with a couple different teams, like the Cardinals, the Raiders, and the Dolphins. And I didn't get brought into camp that year. I knew that I was probably on a couple people's boards, right? If somebody got injured, I was going to be brought in, all this kind of stuff. So I was hopeful, but I didn't get brought in. And that was the exact same time when I was saying I got these offers I got not the offers for the business, but I was getting noticed by companies in industry, and that's why I accepted the job in Florida. And the reason why I did that is because at that particular time, I think I was like 25, 26, and as a running back. And so I had about one more year that I could really say, okay, I give it a go to see if it's going to happen, because the older you get, right, the less profitable, I guess, you are as an athlete. And so I thought I was still phenomenal. No one could have told me otherwise. I was like, dude, I'm still phenomenal. But anyway, that's what ended up happening with my NFL career. Basically, I had a couple teams interested. I really was an NFL prospect, and I just didn't get brought into camp one particular year at the exact same time when hydrogen invaded my story. So if that cousin of my wife's never introduced me or anything, me and you would not be talking today. And I would have probably tried to make it to the NFL and see. If I did not, I would have definitely probably went to the CFL.
Yeah, God has a plan for you, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, man. Yeah, he does.
So all right. Last couple questions. I just want you to speak directly if you can, because I get this a lot too about talking about the Kangen water machines, and so I've heard from a lot of people that their machines stopped working, or they're not sure it's still producing hydrogen, and that there's something about sort of the the cathodes and the anodes not being able to be operating properly because you're not cleaning it properly. So I don't know what your opinion is, or if you have an opinion about these machines, because they certainly are part of like an MLM movement where people are buying and selling a lot of them. So what do you say about Kangen water?
Yeah, man. So Kangen water, I would say these Kangen machines would be classified as a conventional water ionizer. And so they meet all the criteria to otherwise say they're not a new generation type water ionizer. They are kind of like the original technology that was used to make water ionizers. And so they function as a conventional water ionizer. They can produce therapeutic levels of hydrogen gas within the right circumstances, with the right source water conditions. But the problem is what we just talked about earlier is limitations. They are severely limited in producing and dissolving therapeutic levels of hydrogen gas consistently in water, and this is a big issue, and why people Kangen people kind of avoid the hydrogen category. And so let you know this how close to home to me this is. The first water ionizer I ever owned was a Kangen system. So I have not previously, I have today an SD501. I've tested many K8s, many SD501s, many junior twos. I've tested. I know the systems, and so I know the limitations. So much so that is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about helping people with products today. So I was actually helping people with sharing hydro-rich water with my SD 501. Okay, and there was also a local kind of water store that was in Wichita, Kansas, that was sharing alkaline water from that store. Okay, so at this particular time, a reagent came out called H2 Blue. So this little reagent here, H2 Blue, this is a reagent that allows you to be able to measure dissolved hydrogen gas within water and basically be able to detect its presence. So this came out. I know the owner of it, and we actually got to meet in Wichita. And so I got to test my system, and I got to test the system that was at that store. And we were blown away because we assumed at the time that because you saw visible bubbles in the water, that there was going to be dissolved therapeutic levels of hydrogen gas in the water. Because dissolved hydrogen gas is invisible to the naked eye. So I call visible bubbles show bubbles. They're just show bubbles. You're not going to get any benefit from those. As soon as you drink the water and that water surface area changes, right, and the bubbles come to the top, they're going to escape right out the glass while you're drinking, right? They're show bubbles. It is dissolved molecular hydrogen gas or nanobubbles of hydrogen gas that is actually stuck in solution, which is basically about something called Brownian's motion. It's stuck in solution. It can't get out. That goes into the body and benefits you. So we started to test, and it had no detectable levels of hydrogen gas, even though it had all these show bubbles. Blown away. I was like, this cannot be, right? Tested my system, and it was making like 0.4 milligrams per liter, ppm. Pretty low concentration of hydrogen gas within the water. And this got to what we're talking about, the limitations, which is those systems can get calcium scaling on the plates. And this calcium scaling actually prohibits the nanobubbles of hydrogen gas that can be produced on those plates from actually getting into solution properly. But it goes even further than that, because we figured out that it's not just calcium scaling, but it can be a microscopic layer of calcium that can prevent hydrogen gas from properly dissolving into the water with these systems. Also, it doesn't help that calcium precipitates out of water, meaning it comes out of solution in an alkaline pH. So once the water hits about an 8.4 pH, calcium starts to precipitate out of solution. So this is where you actually will get, a lot of scaling. So it's set up, so to speak, to fail. For like hydrogen-rich water. You have to be very diligent in your maintenance, in your cleaning, and to be able to ensure that those scaling does not get basically on the plates, or else you're going to end up basically diminishing the therapeutic potential of the water itself. Another issue is that they're highly contingent on source water conditions or the minerals in the water. And since nobody's source water is identical, meaning like not all source water is made equal. If you have, some source water that has, let's say 300 TDS of sodium or salt in it, right? It's going to be a very conductive water. Since the minerals in the water is used for conductivity to run electrolysis to produce hydrogen and the alkaline pH of the water, that source water can be very conducive for a therapeutic concentration. But let's say someone's on well water and they have like 300 ppm like boron or something, and it's not very good. So whereas this person could be getting 0.8 ppm out of it and they got a therapeutic, concentration in the water, this poor person over here on the well water he can't get nothing. Or let's say somebody in Northern California somewhere has really, 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 really soft water and they have low TDS water. We've actually seen that if you don't have a TDS of about 80 TDS, you're likely not going to be producing nor dissolving hydrogen gas within the water to get a therapeutic level.
Does that mean, because I've been using, I make distilled water, and I actually use distilled water in the hydrogen machines. Does that not produce hydrogen then if I'm using distilled water? Basically.
Yes. So basically with a Kangen system, they don't have any kind of, I'll say it this way. A Kangen system, like I said, is a conventional water ionizer. They use something called a ionic membrane between the cathode and the anode, the actual electrode or metal plate that produce these streams of water, or the hydrogen gas and oxygen and basically the byproduct. So anyway, they use this ionic membrane, which basically allows electrons to travel through, right? But it keeps the water separate. And because of this, they're, like I said, they're using water as itself or the minerals in the water as itself as a conductive agent to basically run electrolysis. And so if you were to funnel distilled water through a Kangen system, you're getting nothing because it has no minerals in it. It has no mineral ions in it. So, but let's say, for example, there's newer technology that's on the market that uses proton exchange membranes, or PEMs, sometimes referred to as SPE, which stands for solid polymer electrolytes. So basically, it's a specialized membrane where the membrane itself is conductive. So now you can use distilled water, RO water, spring water, whatever water you want, your preferred drinking water, and it will always run the process of electrolysis to produce hydrogen gas. So that's why, let's say, for example, with your question, I would need to know what kind of system you have. Do you have a PEM system, or do you have a AWI, or alkaline water ionizer type system?
Yeah, no, this is all great information. And actually, the story about Kangen kind of makes me mad. I'm sure they're going to come out and sort of flame us on the podcast comments, because they're targeting people with cancer that have serious diseases, and they're very expensive machines, and I just don't like to see that out there where people are kind of misinformed and misleading people just because they're running a kind of a single layer or MLM program, and I don't think that's a good look. So
No.
thanks for clarifying that on the Kangen
Yeah,
water.
man. I mean, if they have any issues as well, I mean, they can always go to my website. I have a blog article explaining Kangen water, and I go through a lot of the details and sources. So if you don't like what I'm saying, well, then you have to refute it through what has been substantiated from the sources. And those sources are predicated on research and scientists, not predicated on opinions or because of some company marketing it. Just because it's from Japan does not qualify it to be the greatest thing ever. Even with my sources from Japan, I can ask them questions about Kangen water, and they'll tell you the exact same thing. It's conventional water ionizer. It's not actually what we classify as a hydrogen technology. So that in and of itself is what it is. And if you do have a Kangen system and you watch this, I think hearing these facts, while they might not be so fun to hear, they are necessary to capitalize on the money that you've invested. So I actually have another article, how to get the most out of your Kangen system. So because the only therapeutic agent from these systems is hydrogen gas. No ORP, no microclustering of water, no structure of the water. Like none of these things are actually been demonstrated scientifically to give us any benefit. If I were to get into microclustering altogether, it can rip that to shreds from just basic biology and science. And so if it is only about the hydrogen gas, then they should absolutely want to know the limitations so they can maximize on what the system can do.
Okay, last question. Have you ever delved into the science about the oxygenated water? There's a lot of people sort of proponents of this sort of the opposite of hydrogen water, which is infusing more oxygen into the water.
Yeah. So basically, oxygen water, unfortunately, is very limited as well. You might have some kind of localized benefit maybe to the gut. There's some studies on some of this that can have some kind of gut, let's say, some kind of localized benefit to, aiding towards regulating some of the gut flora, especially if you have some bacteria or things like that that need to be handled. But in a large part, that's very, very, how do I say this? There's not much to substantiate it, because the biggest issue with oxygen water in the principle of saying you're going to get more oxygen in your body is basically on a false premise. So what I mean by that is to say, just like I was able to calculate how much hydrogen gas was in the water of the volume, like in milliliters of gas, we can do the same thing for oxygen. And you can actually see this in real time. But basically, if I were to show you some numbers, but when you drink oxygenated water, at whatever ppm they'll say it at. Sometimes it'll be kind of mild or a little higher. You can actually get more oxygen into your body by taking 1 or 2 more breaths than you would by drinking a gallon of this water. The reason is because what I just said. Oxygen will follow the same exact path that hydrogen follows when you drink it. And it takes a direct path to your lungs. And you lose it all. you lose like a considerable portion, right? Like 60 to 70% of that is just totally gone, right? And so realizing that is part of it. You're gonna have these crazy losses, but also you have kind of like the, what's it called? I won't even get into the technical term, but basically what I will say is that oxygen also is handled or regulated in your body, right? So the oxyhemoglobin levels. So you can't just, put arbitrarily more oxygen into the system without affecting hemoglobin's affinity to uptake it, right? So this is why when you take one of these like little sensors like these, right? One of these little oxygen sensors, right? And I can see my O2 level, right? And I can go ahead and see it. It'll say something like 97%, right? Well, it's reading oxyhemoglobin, right? It's reading the oxyhemoglobin, right? Like oxygen is bonded, so only about 1.5% of oxygen is dissolved into the blood, directly into the blood. Your body protects yourself from oxygen. You can't just throw more in the system and just hope it's going to get there. And also, like I said, it's never going to make it to your muscles because you're going to lose a considerable portion of it.
Yeah, for those of you out there that love oxygenated water, I have a special program that will show you how to take some extra breaths. It's only $7,500 right now.
Just breathe a little bit more, man.
Now, Taiwan will give you a free consultation. But
yeah.
Taiwan, tell everybody where they can find you. Can someone get a one-on-one with you, and how do they find all of your studies and your blog articles? How do they reach you?
Yeah. So basically, you can go to my company, h2hub.com, h2hub with 2 B's.com, hubb.com. There's no space between the H2 and the hub. And then you can also find me at H2 Minutes. I have a YouTube channel called H2 Minutes where I cover everything about hydrogen therapy and its related sciences. I cover a lot of these topics. I've tried to do it in a fun and engaging way. Been doing that for many years now. And then also all the Instagram stuff. You can always find me there on all the social media platforms. So you can see H2 Hub or H2 Minutes on Instagram. So these will be the places where you can get in touch with me. If you want a one-on-one, it's best to go to my company website. And on my company website, there will be a place for you to book a time of a consult with me. And I can help you not only with hydrogen information and some of the benefits and what the research says, but also how to navigate the market. That's what my company does. H2 Hub does that. That's why we exist, is to basically make the research simple and also third-party test products against performance standards that are based on the scientific research, so that people can actually see what products are going to give them benefits and which ones won't, which ones are safe. And so this is kind of what we do all day. This is why I have so many products. I've tested more than 100 products on the market easily, and we only recommend the ones that pass our testing.
Yeah, I love what you're doing, Taiwan. You're very aligned with what we're doing at the Swell Score. That's why I originally reached out to you. You guys, go support Taiwan. Check out his YouTube channel. Reach out to him if you're confused like I was about hydrogen water and its benefits, and also the products that are out there. He's reviewed a lot of products, and his reviews are on point. So thank you, Taiwan, for spending the time. This hour went by really fast. We'll have to have you come back in and talking about clustered water and structured water. That'll be our next interview.
Yeah, man, it'd be great. Gary, thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be able to share the information about hydrogen, share my story, and I hope it blesses people and helps them to be able to try hydrogen and see the benefits for themselves.
I love it. All right, thanks for coming on, everybody. Go have your hydrogen water. Make sure you get 3 grams. What is it? 1 to 3
milligrams. 1 to 3 milligrams per day or more.
1 to 3 milligrams, which you need to do by drinking 3 16-ounce bottles that have a minimum of 1.6 parts per million, right? Did I get that right?
There we talk about, Gary. That's what I'm talking about.
Come on, coach. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great one.